Mike Tyson's name is carved into the history of boxing like fire into stone, a legend of speed, power, and raw intimidation. He wasn't just a fighter. He was a force of nature, an unstoppable storm that reduced opponents to rubble before they even had the chance to blink. For years, he seemed untouchable, the embodiment of the knockout artist, a man against whom even surviving one round felt like a victory. Yet, as with all great champions, there were moments when even Iron Mike looked vulnerable, when victory slipped from his grasp and the world held its breath as he teetered on the brink of defeat. And in those moments, Tyson's legend grew not because he was invincible, but because he fought back with the fury of a man who refused to surrender his throne. By 1990, Tyson was at his peak, the undisputed heavyweight champion, a man no one dared to underestimate. Then came Buster Douglas, a fighter few considered a threat. But on that fateful night in Tokyo, Douglas shocked the world. He absorbed Tyson's best shots and delivered one of the most famous uppercuts in history. Tyson crashed to the canvas, dazed and beaten, and for the first time, the myth of invincibility was shattered. It was the night Iron Mike became human, yet his story didn't end there. From those ashes rose a hunger to prove himself again, to remind the world that one defeat did not erase a legacy. Enter Donovan "Razor" Ruddock, a dangerous knockout artist in his own right, a man many believed would end Tyson's era once and for all. Ruddock was fast, powerful, and fearless, claiming Tyson was the only man who could push him to greatness. Their clash was more than a fight. It was a collision of wills. From the opening bell, the two tore into each other like predators fighting for survival. Tyson looked sharp, floating and striking with the kind of precision that reminded everyone of his glory days. By the third round, he dropped Ruddock with a lightning counter, a reminder that his fists were still loaded with dynamite. But Ruddock refused to fold. He rose, regrouped, and began hammering Tyson with savage uppercuts that staggered the champion. For the first time since Douglas, Tyson looked vulnerable. Fans gasped as Razor pressed forward, refusing to be bullied, daring to stand toe-to-toe with the most feared man in boxing. In the seventh round, with momentum shifting, it seemed Tyson's reign might crumble again. But Iron Mike was built for chaos. With fury in his fists, he unleashed a barrage so brutal that the referee stepped in, saving Ruddock from certain destruction. Tyson had survived the storm and proved that even on shaky legs, his will to win was stronger than any man's assault. 9 years later, in 1999, Tyson found himself once again tested. His opponent was Francois Botha, a fighter no one expected to trouble the former champion. Yet Botha wasn't there to play the role of victim. He mocked Tyson in the build-up, laughed in his face, and even during the fight, used dirty tactics and constant clinches to frustrate him. Tyson's temper, always close to the surface, began to boil over. At one point, he nearly dislocated Botha's arm in a clinch, a shocking display of rage that threatened disqualification. Botha taunted him, danced around him, even landed clean shots that made it seem for a moment like the unthinkable could happen. But Tyson's corner managed to calm the storm within him. When the red mist cleared, the fighter returned. In the fifth round, he reminded the world of his power. One perfectly timed right hand detonated on Botha's jaw, sending him stumbling like a man struck by lightning. He tried to rise, but his legs betrayed him. The fight was over. Tyson had been pushed, provoked, nearly embarrassed, but when it mattered most, his fists wrote the ending. Not all of Tyson's tests came from unknown challengers. In 1987, he met Tony Tucker, another undefeated giant, taller, longer, and boasting a perfect record of 34-0. Tucker had just beaten Buster Douglas and came in believing he had the skills and size to dethrone Tyson. Early in the fight, he landed one of the hardest punches Tyson had ever absorbed, a shot that wobbled the champion and sent shockwaves through the crowd. For the first time, it looked like size and technique might overcome Tyson's ferocity. Tucker even dared to mock him, dancing, taunting, treating the young champion like a child. But Tyson thrived on disrespect. Fueled by rage, he pressed forward, breaking Tucker's rhythm, forcing exchanges and wearing him down with body shots that cracked ribs and sapped energy. Round after round, Tyson imposed his will, proving that dynamite burns hotter than TNT. By the final bell, there was no question. Tucker had tested him, but Tyson had emerged victorious, once again showing that arrogance was no match for relentless determination. Then came Frank Bruno, the British powerhouse built like a comic book hero, muscles stacked on muscles, a body sculpted for intimidation. Bruno's words were as big as his biceps. He mocked Tyson, declared he'd wipe him off the boxing map, and promised a knockout. And for a brief moment, it looked like he might be right. In the opening rounds, Bruno stunned Tyson with a vicious left hook that left the champion wobbly. The crowd gasped as Tyson staggered, vulnerable, on the edge of disaster. Bruno pressed forward, sensing glory, but Tyson was never more dangerous than when cornered. Shaking off the cobwebs, he responded with savage combinations that cut through Bruno's guard like a buzzsaw. The muscles that had once intimidated Tyson were now slowing Bruno down, dragging his punches through mud. Tyson's fists, by contrast, were lightning. In the 5th round, he unleashed a storm so violent the referee had no choice but to stop it, saving Bruno from further punishment. Tyson had been rocked, humbled for a heartbeat, but he turned the tide and crushed the arrogant challenger, leaving no doubt who the true predator was. And then there was Mitch Green, the street tough gang leader who tried to use Tyson's name as a ladder for his own infamy. Green promised destruction, hurled insults, and made their fight more personal than professional. Inside the ring, he fought with raw aggression, even managing to frustrate Tyson with clinches and bursts of offense. For 12 grueling rounds, he pushed Tyson harder than most, forcing the young champion to dig deep. Tyson painted Green's face with his fists, round after round, but the challenger refused to fold. Tyson ultimately won the decision, but Green's defiance lingered. 2 years later, the feud reignited, not under the lights of the ring, but under the streetlights of Harlem. In a late-night brawl outside a clothing store, Tyson settled the score with one bare-knuckle punch that shattered Green's face and cemented their rivalry in infamy. It was proof that Iron Mike's fury was not confined to the squared circle. Through all these battles, what emerges is not just the image of an unbeatable machine, but of a man who faced danger, doubt, and defeat head-on. Tyson wasn't untouchable. He wasn't flawless. But when pushed to the brink, when giants mocked him, when challengers tested him, he rose with the ferocity of a man who refused to be broken. His greatness wasn't just in the knockouts that came easy, but in the wars where victory nearly slipped away, and he clawed it back with blood, sweat, and unshakable will. Mike Tyson will forever be remembered not simply as the knockout artist who ended fights in seconds, but as the warrior who, when cornered, proved again and again why he was called the baddest man on the planet. So, I'll turn it over to you. Which of these fights shocked you the most? Was it Ruddock pushing him to the brink, Bruno rocking him early, or both his antics nearly breaking his composure? Share your thoughts in the comments.